My first flight was from Vancouver to Cancun in Mexico, and then I had a flight from there to Lima, and from Lima I took an overnight bus to Huaraz. I walked into town, wandered around the main plaza, just kind of checking everything out. And then on my way back to my hostel, I saw these guys playing a street soccer game, and they invited me to come watch them and share some beers. The next day, I walked into town and caught a collectivo, basically a van taxi, that took me to the trailhead of my first acclimatization hike, which was Laguna Wilcacocha. I actually ended up getting lost because I followed the directions my hostel owner gave me and took the first trail I saw, and I just ended up going through people's yards or little farms, and it was pretty cool though, but eventually I had to turn back because I had to make sure that I would get a ride home. Unfortunately, I had to give that little white dog a kick in the ribs to keep him from biting me. And as I was running off from him and his little buddy, a taxi pulled up, and those guys thought it was pretty funny to see the gringo running for his life from two tiny little dogs. But I eventually caught a bus and got back to Huaraz, and I met a guy from Seattle on it, and a girl from France, and another girl from Romania who I had dinner with. And then I made some plans with the Seattleite, Max, to do some climbing. The next day I did a acclimatization hike at Laguna Churup with a bunch of other people that happened to go at the same time. One of those was a girl named Sophie from Belgium who I hiked with for most of the time. Both of us were acclimatizing about the same speed, so it worked out. It was pretty tough to breathe up there. I hadn't been in Peru very long at this point, but the views were really nice. And then the way home, I got lomo saltado for lunch and chicha morada, which is like one of their special drinks there. The next acclimatization hike was Laguna 69, which is an extremely popular hike, maybe the most popular day hike there. So the easiest way to get there is just take a tour bus with a bunch of other people. There's a guide and everything, and but you end up hiking on your own, just in a group of about 30 spread out on the way to the lake. Actually, Sophie happened to take the exact same tour, so that was cool to meet up again. But yeah, that was a beautiful spot. Not too hard of a hike. I felt a little better acclimatized than I did on Laguna Churup because I took a rest day in between. And yeah, that was overall a good day hike.
Muy bien, desde Isabel Región Sierra, niños de 4 años, a cargo de la Miss Milagros. Fuertes aplausos, un saludo cordial a usted, Miss. Muy buena.
Next up was an attempt on Nevado Pisco with Max and his brother Jack. After getting a warm meal and a good night's rest in the hut, we decided to do the alpine route to Laguna 69 the next day. Max, Jack, and I left early in the morning to make an attempt on Nevado Pisco. We got lost in the Taos fields with a couple other groups. And eventually I got extremely sick, vomited everywhere. Max vomited a little bit too. And I decided to turn around, and they eventually turned around a little bit further up. That turned out to be too high, too quick for me, but we ended up having a good hike out and saw lots of friendly animals along the way. And actually, we were able to hitch a ride from the trailhead on one of the Laguna 69 tour buses. But some of the tourists did not like how certain members of our party smelled who were sitting next to them. Back in civilization, I made plans for a solo trip real quick up into the Yashinka Valley. And I ate some good food and drank some beer in preparation. I said goodbye to my new dog friend and headed up towards the Yashinka Valley and eventually Refugio Yashinka. And the plan was to climb Urus Esta. It ended up being a nice, pretty mellow hike up to the hut where there were already lots of people staying in the hut and base camped around it. I reserved a spot in the hut and had some dinner and listened to some live music before hitting the sack. Here's a rough outline of the route up Urus Esta from the Yashinka hut. That's the refuge over there. Heading up there somewhere to Urus, hopefully Esta. I think I see a light. There's a lot of moisture in the air. It's 3:35. Well, the fucking trail is snow covered and extremely exposed, but I decided it would be smarter to go up and wait for the sun to melt it than to try to descend in the dark. I've had to use this guy for the last 30 minutes. Fucking sketch. Unfortunately, the cold got to my phone and I was unable to get any pictures of what was probably the most beautiful sunrise I've seen in my entire life. But overall, it ended up being an okay day, and I was able to make it back to the hut all right. Heading out of the Yashinka Valley. Over there, Takarahu, I think. And Yashinka's back there somewhere. Some guides showing people how to climb, kind of. And yeah, it's gonna be an easy downhill walk. While staying at the hut, I was able to arrange for a taxi to pick me up at the trailhead. But when I got back to the trailhead, I waited around for a couple hours with my dog friend, and no taxi showed up. But luckily, some French climbers were nice enough to let me tag along with them for free. They wouldn't take any money. And we also picked up some locals along the way to take them into Huaraz. So yeah, it was pretty cool. Next step was catching another night bus, this time back to Lima, to meet up with my travel mate for the rest of the trip.